Okay, good afternoon. I hope all of you are staying warm today since it suddenly decided to. Is this our third or fourth Oklahoma winter this year? I've lost count. But I know at one point we had spring and now we're back to winter again. So, but I'm Melissa Ogram. I'm our State Reading Sufficiency Director, and I am joined today by two of my wonderful colleagues. Lauren Jinks Jones is also on the call. She's our Director of Early Childhood. I'm going to speak for her though, because she has her lovely little one-year-old daughter with her today because her daycare is closed. So I know we all of us who've had ghost kiddos know what a challenge that is. And we also have Deb Wade with us. Deb, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Wade. I am the Director of Elementary English Language Arts.
All right, thank you. So I'm always glad to be joined by my colleagues because this is not one of those things that one person takes care of. It is certainly a team effort. And so I always appreciate Deb and Lauren and Brenda, who is usually with us, but had another conflict today, is always able to join us. Kristen, thanks for getting us started. If you don't mind putting your name and where you're from in the chat real quick, that kind of helps us get an idea of who has joined us today. And then we also have our running agenda that I've put in the chat, and we will keep posting it there just to make it a little easier to find, since I know when everyone starts putting things in the chat, it gets buried very quickly. Remember, this running agenda is one that we started back in last August, and it is extremely long by now. But the reason we've wanted to keep it all together is there's a lot of resources that we have been pushing out throughout the year and wanted to make sure that you have access to all of that in one document. So please don't hesitate to get on there and be able to utilize that to find those resources so that you can use those. Okay, so let me share my screen. And let's see, I think that's the one I want. It's the problem of having too many tabs open at one time. Deb, are you able to see the agenda on the screen? Yes, okay, perfect. All right, so just a couple of quick things. It is that time of year again, just like Christmas. It comes around once a year. It is RSA spring reporting. Try not to be quite as excited as I am about it. So we do have end of year. Sorry, guys, I know it's April. You guys are exhausted. So I'm going to try to put a little extra energy in today just to keep you awake. But we do have end of year reporting for RSA that will open up by May 1st. A little sooner if OMES can click the button earlier, but I know they had a couple of updates they were making for me. So it's just when that gets that done. This is found on single sign-on. So if you are familiar with single sign-on, this is the one no one is ever able to find. They always call me and say, where is this? It is under the Reading Sufficiency Act survey. Remember, we're taking a survey of how our kids did at the beginning and end of the year. So if you will remember, you can open up that Reading Sufficiency Act survey, and up at the top, once it's opened, there will be a tab here that says end of year. Okay, so that's what you'll be looking for. In the fall, we did the beginning of year survey. And it's not showing because I don't have a school selected. And then we would do the end of year survey right up there. Okay, so that will be due May 31st. It's a pretty simple report. It's making sure that you know the things that you'll need to have in front of you is how many students were added to a plan after beginning of year reporting, how many students that were on a plan left your school since then so that we can subtract that number, and then how many students have completed their plan successfully. In other words, they've met that grade level target of where we want them to be, and they are no longer requiring intervention supports and services. Okay, so you'll need that number for kindergarten, first, second, and third grade, just as a total for each site to be able to enter in. Your beginning of year data is already preloaded on that report, and then it will compute anything else that's needed. So, but there is a video tutorial that has been done, and it is right here. You can just click there. It will also be on the report itself. It's only about 7 minutes long, just to kind of walk you through where to find it and the information that you need. And just that reminder to don't forget to have your superintendent certify. That's the thing that we find gets forgotten a lot. Many of you will fill this out, and then the superintendent, rightfully so, gets so busy they just forget to go in and click that certify button. So sometimes you have to hound them a little bit. And we do appreciate the time that it takes, because we know it's hard filling out all these reports, but we really do use them. The other thing that is open, again, it's that time of year, the annual district reading plan. We were able to get that open a little earlier than usual this year. So some of you I know would prefer to fill that out earlier rather than later. This is not due till August 31st, but remember, August gets a little nutty, and I have a feeling this year, August will be a little crazier than normal when we are transitioning back to getting all these kids in and placed. So it is again available on single sign-on. You will find it right here under the annual district reading plan. My screen looks a little bit different than yours, but you'll come in. The first time it is opened, you will find 3 questions. The 3 questions are did 100% of your students meet RSA criteria on the state test? Obviously, we don't have those scores back and will not have them back until late May. So you have a couple of choices here as a district. You can either say no, because honestly, the vast majority, I think at most, we've had 14 schools that have honestly been able to say yes. So you can go ahead and say no, so you can access your plan if you'd like to get it filled out, or you can wait until those scores come back out in May. Now remember, this is not, we didn't retain anyone. This is, did all of our students take the OSTP, and did they meet 100% criteria? All of them meet RSA criteria, okay? With as many I know that I've been seeing on social media looking at opt-out options and things like that, I think that's gonna be a pretty difficult thing to achieve for our schools. But so just kind of have that awareness. So the other 2 questions are is school being served as a TSI or CSI school through the Office of School Support? If you don't know, you likely aren't, but if you're not sure, check with your federal programs office or your curriculum office. If you are not already working there, they will likely be able to tell you if that status is there. And then finally, is this all your previous plans been approved? Everyone can always say yes on that, because we make sure that we don't stop until all those plans are approved and taken care of. So um, if a school is able to answer yes to all of those questions, and remember that first one is really hard to answer yes to. Oops, I think I have somebody that might need to mute. Then you are exempt from filling out that plan. Your district is. Couple of things to be aware of. If you don't fill out that plan and you have to fill it out the following year, you have to start from scratch, because most of us are able just to import last year's data over and just make updates. If you are exempt one year, you aren't able to pull it over from previous years. You have to start over from the beginning. So sometimes I've had some districts that will go ahead and fill it out regardless, because they don't want to have to be in that position. So just that awareness. Also, remember, up here on this plan, and it's also on our running agenda, there is a video tutorial. We made this last year, but it's still appropriate for this year. There have been no changes to the reading plan for this year from last. That just helps walk you through filling out that plan. So if you are new to completing a plan, or you have a new principal, somebody who might need to be aware of that, or you just need a refresher, great idea just to watch through that tutorial, because we walk you through every step, and we've tried to point out the pitfalls of the reasons why we might need to call you and ask for a correction, okay? I think the biggest things that we generally tend to call on are schools not identifying all 3 benchmark assessment windows where needed. Generally, we find schools will only put the first benchmark window, or they'll just put the entire year. We have to have 3 distinct windows when we're doing that universal screening. The other reason we might call is not identifying the interventions that we're needing to see. A lot of times it's not an issue of what the intervention is, it's just that they haven't been identified. So pay close attention to those 2 areas, and generally we're pretty good. And I think last year, Deb, wouldn't you say, I don't think we had to do quite as many calls last year. I think we got done a lot faster because I think schools are just getting really good at that. So we do appreciate your work on that. As always, if you have any problems, give us a holler. Anyone that's on our team is able to answer your questions. And if we can't, we'll get an answer for you. But again, that's due August 30th. But we're trying to get that open early so that you have some time before we get into the craziness of next year. And then speaking of reports and OSTP, I know you guys are right in the middle of that. For early RSA reporting, don't forget that all third grade ELA testing to get those early scores back must be completed by May 3rd, and that those scores will come back by May 24th. I've been getting a lot of questions about that lately. I know that's really kind of hitting on when you are dismissing as well. So one of the questions I've received is, well, can we go ahead and have conversations before we get those scores with parents if we're looking at either retaining, or we have a student that we know we think won't meet RSA criteria and doesn't meet anything else, but we want to have that promotion meeting. That is fine. You can have that meeting. Just put the caveat in there. If your student meets RSA criteria, then we'll just go ahead and promote. We don't have to worry about the probationary part of promotion, or if the retention part comes up, it would be under district policy, not under state law. So if there is hesitancy on the part of the parent and or the family, that may need to be revisited. Okay. Let me stop there because that was 3 things I just blew through really quickly. And Deb, tell me about the chat.
Actually, hardly anything. Diane had a question on spring reporting, if it was the same questions from previous years.
Yes. Yep, nothing has changed on any of our reporting. Even if we wanted to make a change, which really didn't see a need to, would not be the year to do it. So let's just try to keep this as simple as possible.
And then someone asked about letters training.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, anything else? If that pops up, just let me know. Okay, promotion and retention. We have an updated form just to make sure that we are able to report out. You don't need necessarily anything else here if you are looking at a student that needs to be promoted through a different pathway other than the OSTP or is being retained. One of the questions that keeps coming up, do I have to fill this out for all of my third grade students? Right here, we've put in bright red letters. This document is not required for students who are promoted through Pathway 1, which is the OSTP. We put the document on here in case either 1, the district wanted it for some reason, because some people enjoy paperwork. I haven't met them yet, but or 2, mainly to make sure that we didn't have confusion and start with the number 2 and everyone's going, what's going on with Pathway 1? Because people are still trying to figure out the pathways. I mean, I've received several emails lately with state testing, can we use the screening assessment, not realizing that Pathway 2 has been in existence for quite some time. So just that awareness of why that's there. We've got, remember, our second pathway, meeting that end of year target for third grade is at any time during first, second, or third grade. It means that student is eligible for promotion under RSA. Okay. The 7 good cause exemptions, I'm not going to go through all of them. We have gone through them quite a bit, but they are listed out here. The only thing I am going to mention is 2 things real quick. Be aware there's a difference between exemption 2. These are students on an IEP who take the OAP, not the regular state test, and exemption 5, which is students on an IEP that take the regular state test. So it's dealing with 2 different types of IEP issues, and that's how we distinguish them. And also remember that there were updates last year, so that they're in effect also this year, to exemption 5 and 6. So exemption 5, it says that IEP students who are making adequate progress toward their IEP goals, it removed the previous requirement of having a year retention before that. So there's no retention requirement at all for good cause 5. Okay. It doesn't mean an automatic promotion for all students on an IEP. We do still have this caveat of adequate progress as determined by the IEP team. And then Good Cause 6 shifted this for students who have previously been retained. It eliminated the 2-year retention. It is now 1 year. And remember that transitional grades and retention in pre-K for academic reasons counts towards that exemption. Okay. All right, and then finally Pathway 4, which is our student reading proficiency team, having that agreement. And then if we are retaining that student, okay, make sure that we have that approval signed. Remember that to qualify for the screener, it's just they meet that score. I would recommend recording what the test was and what the score was and when they met that. For exemptions, it just means that the teacher is notifying the principal, hey, we have Joe over here who has met the requirements for Good Cause Exemption 1, be able to explain that. We don't need a big packet of anything. And then the principal approves it and we move forward. And then remember that for the student reading proficiency team, that involves the 3rd grade teacher in charge of on grade level reading instruction, a 4th grade teacher who also teaches reading, the family or parent, and then a certified reading specialist if one is available. There could be additional people involved in that team, such as a special ed teacher, if that student's on an IEP, or speech language pathologist, if that's fine, if appropriate. But it's those members are the ones that make the decision and have to have the unanimous agreement for promotion. And if there is not a unanimous agreement, it's retention. So what had one situation that came up last year where the named members, the 3rd and 4th grade teacher and the family member all wanted to promote, but the school psychologist was sitting in on the meeting and wanted to retain, and they were concerned that that would have not been a unanimous decision. But the school psychologist is not a named member of that reading proficiency team. So they're welcome to add input if that's what the district feels is appropriate, but they are not one of the people that are looking at that unanimous decision. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. Let's see, coming back to our agenda. I know I'm really talking fast today. Remember that promotion and retention decisions will be reported this fall on that report that's on the wave. Okay, so we don't need to do anything about that this spring. Keep track of that. If you have any potential of leaving the district, since I'm assuming everyone on this call are probably the ones filling out that report, make sure it's where it can be found so that they can fill that report out. So anything on the chat, Deb?
Yes, ma'am. Melissa asked, the score may be met during RTI, correct? Not just a benchmark.
Correct. At any time during 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. But do remember, some of the screeners, you don't take the full score, so you don't have a full composite score. You might only do one small subtest. So you have to have that full composite score to be able to get to that point. So, but again, it just depends on your screener. So if I'm doing a screener that I only do, let's say, a phoneme segmentation for my progress monitoring, that's fine, but I need to have the full battery at some point. And I don't have to do that just during my universal screening windows, the 3 times a year. If I think a kiddo's ready for it and I want to try that, it's okay to give that full battery out off the cycle. What else?
Gail asked, does a student with Good Cause 5 or 6 need the principal's and superintendent's signatures?
All Good Cause exemptions require approval from the principal and the superintendent, regardless of which one it is.
The next one is from Sheila. Can a student qualify for exemption 5 if their parents opt out of OSTP testing?
Yes. Yes, they can. That's a great question. So I would put that under the IEP if they would have taken OSTP or if they would have taken the OAP. That's how you'll divide between Good Cause 2 or Good Cause 5. But there's nothing there that said they had to actually take the state test to qualify for the exemption.
Galen asked, what if a student has met an RSA pathway from promotion? However, the parent and teacher agree that for other reasons, the student will be retained. How do I fill out this form?
Okay, so I would go ahead just to clear up any confusion that might come if that student transfers, filling out that they're being retained, and just to make a note that this was not under RSA, that this was a parent request or parent and teacher request. And that's fine. And then when it comes down in the fall to reporting what happened with that student, you're going to go ahead and note that they were retained. Even though they weren't under RSA, because they weren't promoted, so we don't want to put that. They're going to go ahead and be retained, even though it was for a different reason.
Stephanie, is it okay to promote a student who didn't take the state test due to COVID or other circumstances, but meets another pathway?
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to have a lot of those this year, I have a feeling.
And then the last one we have at this point, do we have to give an alternate assessment for good cause 3 if they don't pass the OSTP or meet the district benchmark?
You don't have to offer it, although if you're going to consider retention, there are times where I will have a parent say, well, we weren't offered another assessment. So if it's an issue where you're looking at retaining that student and you think the parent's going to disagree, things like that, that would be another data point to be able to say, parent, this is why we are not recommending a probationary promotion under the student reading proficiency team. But no, you do not have to just as blanket offer that to every single student who does not meet RSA criteria, especially if they have other pathways that they might meet. They probably don't want to take one more test.
That was it up to this point.
Okay, perfect. All right, so moving on our agenda, we have had some questions about transitional grades, and Lauren Jinks Jones really kind of helped put this together. And we've actually had more of these dealing with early childhood, which is kind of why we've worked through here. But this will be, if it's not already, will be live on the website by tomorrow morning. It's uploaded though, we just are waiting on them to click. But transitional grades also comes up under RSA as well. So we just wanted to make sure that we had some information out there, especially since that's a topic of conversation this year in particular, as we're looking at unfinished learning. So the main thing to keep in mind, because I'm not going to read this, it's a short document, it's only 2 pages, but I'm still not going to read it to you. But the thing to remember is there a difference between transition and a transitional grade and retention? On paper, not really. There really isn't. The difference, the realistic difference is that in a transitional grade, it's set up to be more of an intensive intervention classroom, as opposed to when you retain a student, they were repeating the grade. So if Lauren is going into a transitional grade after first grade, she's going into a T2 classroom, a transition from first to second, then she is going to be actually spending a lot more of her day on foundational reading instruction, foundational math instruction, probably will not be trying to repeat the entire first grade year of learning. However, it really does kind of hold a lot of the same thoughts behind it as retention. Lauren, I see you're on camera. Do you want to talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah, as we were going through this guidance, we know that this is a conversation that is happening in districts. I also apologize for the background noise. We know that this is a conversation that's happening with the number of students who we may feel are not ready to advance to the next grade. But we really do want to just caution you in terms of thinking about it as it's kind of like an alternative pathway to retention. So really the only circumstance in which you should be considering a transitional class given the complexities of this year is if you had enough students that would be retained with or without the existence of this class. Because what we don't want to happen is that we create the class class and find kids to put into it, versus having the students that we know need it and would really benefit from it and creating a space for them to have that. So I think that this guidance gives you, if that is the case, if you do have a substantial amount of students who would be retained this year, and it would make sense to have them all in one class together where they could do that kind of focus that Melissa was talking about. This gives you kind of some guidance as to how to do that.
Perfect. Thank you. And go get Miss Reese. So, but we wanted to make sure you were aware that that is there. So it is linked on this running document so that you have access to it immediately, but it will also be on the website for easy access on the RSA page, as well as probably the early childhood page, so that you can locate it either place, because it does tend to be really one that comes up more with kindergarten, things like that. So be aware that's there. And then finally, I wanted to give you a couple of resources because we always like to give you resources. A couple of live events coming up. One, there will be a webinar on May 6th on Beyond the Definition, which is expanding vocabulary instruction in the classroom. Kristen Jones with Enid Public Schools will be doing that. And Kristen, I know you're on here. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so really want to, here, I'll turn on my camera. I'm eating lunch, so it's a late lunch for me today, so I didn't want to like show my camera. But so we're really going to dig into how do we just get beyond dictionary definitions with kids, and how do we make vocabulary stick using word relationships and word parts, and what are some attributes about words that we can dig into with kids. So really kind of coming at vocabulary from a science of reading perspective. Science of reading is not just about phonics. So, but yeah, so that's what we're going to spend some time doing.
Perfect.
About an hour and 15 minutes or so, unless I get long-winded.
Sorry, Kristen, I didn't warn you that I was going to pick on you today, but yeah, happy to see you there.
Yeah, all good.
And then also be aware the National Reading League is doing their spring symposium called All Hands on Deck on Thursday, May 20th. And they have a lot of national speakers, as well as some different breakouts with things that can be immediately applied. So, you know, one of the advantages, we're always looking for silver linings. So one of the advantages to this year is that we have had so many organizations make their conferences or their learning opportunities available for free or very low cost. And they've been virtual, so it has not required us to travel. So we've been able to do a lot of learning. So if you are not used to being on this meeting with us every month, there are some of these resources on every month. So you can just kind of go through these old agendas and find some of them, and most of them, even if they were live at that point, have had recordings that have been released you can inquire about. And then finally, as we're starting to think about next year, one of the things that comes up quite frequently when we're talking about early literacy is the difference between word walls and sound walls. And both serve a purpose, and both there's a way to use for learning. But when we're talking about early childhood, there's a lot more benefit sometimes with sound walls than we have with word walls. Word walls tend to help more in the upper grades when we're looking at vocabulary and content learning. So Dr. Mary Dahlgren has done a webinar for implementing a sound wall. It's a free and open access, but there's also a related blog post and a related podcast that she did with her business partner, Dr. Antonio Fierro. So those are linked there if you want to think about a little bit of learning or something to think about with your teachers of one change that they might want to consider next year, or an instructional practice that they could look into improving. There's one way of addressing that. So, okay, letters training, because I know that question came up. So I've not forgotten about it. We are working on that contract with Voyager to start that up again in the fall. So the contract had expired, and then because of everything kind of got pushed off to the side with COVID and some conversations. So we were not able to get that going again for the summer, but we will be looking at that in the fall. Be aware that this is looking at the newer edition, which is called third edition, and is a little different than what we've done in the past. So in the past, we've done more of their second edition learning, where we would open up a module and it was just catch as catch can, come and just do a few of the modules. We never really had all 12 modules available in the state. So it was pretty rare for someone to have gone through the entire learning. So what we often had are people focused on either the very beginning of it or just vocabulary, but not getting to the grammar or the writing or the comprehension sections of those. So with their new edition, which is what the company is supporting more so through their virtual learning, is to be able to go from point A to point B sequentially through the learning as an actual course. But it takes some time to do that. So it's more of a hybrid model. So you are watching some videos, you're going through and doing some reading on your own. And then after each unit, then you have a day with a facilitator to go through some of the things that you've learned, to clear up any misunderstandings and really hammer home some of those major points that you're looking at. So we'll have that more as cohorts going through that training next year. So we'll have more information that as we get closer to the end of the summer, and how you can apply to be part of that cohort learning to be able to go through that first half of the letters training over this next year. I know on this call, we have several local letters trainers that have completed that. And I also know we've got a couple of national trainers, and Kristen Jones that just talked about is one of our national trainers for letters that does that. Sharon Morgan and Ann Rosales, who's on my screen right now, are both local letters trainers. Sharon, where are you? Do you want to unmute for a second and talk a little bit about your experience with that?
With letters?
Yes.
Yes. So I have completed all 8 modules. And actually this year I also completed the early childhood, which was also really good.
Okay.
And then for units 1 through 4, we went through 4 days of facilitator training to learn how to do the presentations. Then we did it for 5 through 8 as well. So I have a license to do facilitator training in my district, Oklahoma City Public Schools. And we have been going through that with teachers too. And we're going to actually have 9 more facilitators for Oklahoma City Public Schools, so that schools just need to pay for the materials. And then we will have our own trainers to do the face-to-face training. So yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how your teachers are handling going through the training and what kind of feedback you're getting from them? Because it's very different than what we're used to.
Yes. And I will say, try to be upfront about the time commitment. So they have to do their online modules. And then every quarter, we've actually split it up into 2 3-hour sessions per unit. They're asking great questions, really looking at the assessments we use, the materials we use, and have just really gained a knowledge of how the brain learns to read. Okay. And the processes. And I know that when I make decisions, we talk a lot about the simple view of reading. So yeah, it's been really transformational for a lot of our schools.
Thank you, Sharon. I know Tammy Daniel, I know you're on here as well, and you've done some national training as well. Can you talk a little bit about what the teachers you're working with, maybe the time commitment, some of the concerns up front that they had, or how you've addressed some of that with those teachers?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So I am a national trainer. So I'm training a lot in other states, in particular Alabama. So one thing just to keep in mind is, just like everyone has already said, is that it is a time commitment. And, maybe if a school's wanting to do that with several teachers or the entire staff, to sit down and have a plan so that you can be organized, but it does take time, but it is well worth the time. So even teachers, when they're in that unit 1 and they really didn't understand what they signed up for, by the time they get into units 2, 3, 4, they're very pleased with what they're receiving. So it's very practical knowledge for them, transformational for many, many schools.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And the reason I'm not trying to necessarily sell you on this, those of you that have already have established some of your opinions, but since we are making this shift, kind of wanted you to have an awareness of what that might look like. And if you have teachers that would be interested in that, to be aware that it's not just going to a 2 or 4 day training. It's actually working on something of a commitment of about an hour a week throughout the year. But you also are building case studies on students and really applying what you know. So it's a much more effective form of learning and professional development for our teachers. It's just that it takes that time throughout. So we definitely want to be able to support teachers in that. And I know, like I said, Shawnee is working on this with Oklahoma City. Diane, I think you were working with teachers in Stillwater on it. Misty with Mustang. I just got off the phone with Shawnee this morning. They're working on that. Kristen, you said you've used RSA money, which is a perfectly appropriate use of that money to be able to train all of your teachers. And I think
Yeah,
where
we've done about 170 this year.
Yeah, 170 teachers with that.
Yeah. This was an important thing for us, and it's made a huge difference.
Sure. And I think one of the things that you have done, and I've seen with teachers that are the districts where it's made a huge difference, is that their administrators have gone through the training with their teachers.
Yeah, we actually sent our admin through first.
Okay.
Because we knew that our administrators would be key to making it happen in the building. So we actually sent all of our admin through first. We have a couple of new administrators this year, so they are going through with their teachers, but everybody else did it first.
And that helps to know, not only so that the principal can help make sure that we're making purchases that align with what we're wanting to do, that we're encouraging practices that are evidence-based and appropriate, but also to know what to look for during evaluation. So it's really, really critical that we have them going through that as well. So I do see one other question in the chat that I'm going to have to tell you I don't know the answer to. So it's, if our third graders don't finish testing by May 5th, how soon will we get scores for them? I will have to check with the Office of Assessment, and we'll find out and let you know. I'll just put it in this running agenda so that it will be there for you. I'll just add another bullet point there. But unfortunately, I don't have that answer off the top of my head, and I don't want to tell you anything wrong. So. Okay, are there any other questions that have come up that we need to address?
I have not seen any.
Well, we might get a little bit of our time back. Usually we go right up until 3 o'clock, and I'm okay with getting done a little early today. So if additional questions come up, please don't hesitate to let us know. And we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. And otherwise, good luck finishing up testing, and stay warm. And hopefully we'll have spring back very soon. For early scores is the deadline May 5th was what I was told by our Office of Assessment. Oh, I'm sorry, May 3rd. May 3rd. It's trust what I have written down, not what I say out loud. May 3rd is what's on the agenda. May 3rd is what we've been given by our Office of Assessment, and just ignore the words coming out of my mouth. So sorry about that. So.
Melissa.
And, yes, go ahead.
Lisa Fulton, how are you?
Lisa, long time no see.
I know. Hey, I was late getting logged in, and I just want clarification on the updated promotion or retention form for third grade. So we're going to have this document as well as the SRPT form that the superintendent and the principal and everybody signs, correct?
If they're needing that, we tried to make this form where we could have just that assurance of approval, and the teacher could document if we were doing virtual meetings, especially last year when we did not want to have people signing off.
Well, that's what I thought, but then I thought I heard you say all good cause must have the principal and superintendent's signature. Not a signature, just their agreement.
Just their approval. So what this assurance of approval is stating is that the teacher has received that approval. So I know in the past, I know when I was in the district, our superintendent would sit down and sign every single one of those. But it's making sure that the superintendent is aware, hey, we have 170 kids that we're promoting in this way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and just so that you're aware, Lauren, where are you? Are you on screen again? Okay, today is her birthday, and she's having to wrangle a 1-year-old and be on a state call on her birthday. So we need to give her a little bit of love. Or a lot of
Thank you.
love.
I appreciate it. We are celebrating with some puffs over here. So
How fun. All right, guys, we really don't have anything else for you. We will stick around in case there's some other questions that come up last minute, or you just want to talk about something that you really didn't want to address in the whole group. But thank you for your time, and stay safe, stay healthy, and let us know whatever else we can help you with. Yes, Gail, that means if that assurance of approval is signed, that means that the teacher is saying, I have permission from the principal and the superintendent that everything's good to go. I would check with your leadership to see if that is acceptable to your leadership, or if they feel that they would rather have a signed document. That's up to them. Okay.
Melissa,
All
to
right.
expound on what you just said, were you saying that the teacher can sign this form and just approve that he or she has permission from
Has that
principal and superintendent?
Has that
Okay.
permission? Yes. So again, so like Heidi, you might in your district say, okay, we're good with that. We're trusting the teacher on that. Or if you feel that we really do want that assurance, it might be, hey, teacher, we need to have this attached to a signature page or an email that you're going to have from them. Or if you are in person and you want to have them actually sign it. So this would be kind of the bare minimum, what we need to have. But then as a district, decide what is it that you want to make sure you're standing behind as well, knowing that that is the expectation. Does that help a little bit? Okay.
One more question from Lisa.
Okay, Lisa.
What do we do? Did I see a document for the 4th to 5th, 5th to 6th?
There is on our readings RSA coordinator page.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Down here at the very bottom, you'll see ongoing documentation
is.
for 4th and 5th grade.
Okay. I knew I had seen it. I just couldn't find it again. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just so for those of you that aren't aware, this is for our students that promoted under the committee that are probationarily promoted. We have to review those, and then are we going to either say they've demonstrated grade level proficiency and we don't have to review any longer, or they haven't demonstrated grade level proficiency and we're either going to promote them or we're going to retain them. And remember, after 5th grade, it transitions to a locally developed plan. So there are not any state documents after 5th grade, because it's deciding as a district, we still have to meet the needs of the student. How would we do that? What is our local plan for 6th grade and beyond for students who are still not reading on grade level? Okay, anything else? All right. Well, everybody have a wonderful day. 4th and 5th grade report, same on signatures, yes. Does a new reading plan need to be filled out for 4th and 5th grade, or does this form take care of it? You would need to have a reading plan. How are you providing intervention for those 4th and 5th grade students that are on probation? And remember, on our reading plan, we do have that. Let's see here. Let me get back over to our reading plan. There we go. And remember, there's a place here that says this is a 4th and 5th grade student that did not meet RSA criteria and that we're needing to continue to provide intervention for that student. So just that you can use this if you have your, again, this is a sample document that you can either use as is, or you can take and make sure that you have included all of the requirements and you have
Okay.
something.
So Melissa, if we filled this out the first time for the 3rd grader that we probationary promoted, can we just update this then for the 4th and 5th grade if they're still like borderlining, or do we need to fill out a new IRPI every year?
Well, you'll have different teachers, so you'll have different people that you'll need to note. And you'll have different scores. Obviously, you would want to have the beginning, middle, and end of year scores on there. So really, I mean, you can transfer that, a lot of that same information. Hopefully, though, we're not just, if you have a student that they were getting an intervention in third grade, if they're still not where they need to be after a year of that intervention, there's likely going to need to be a pretty big change in that intervention process.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. That makes
Yeah.
sense. I'm just thinking about like in case where you have a kid that comes in super low
Right.
and then like they're making steady progress, but it's not, we haven't hit benchmark yet.
Right.
Like we just keep missing it. Like we missed it in third, we just barely missed it in fourth. And so I was just wondering if you added on, like if you took the editable one and you added on to it for the third, fourth, and fifth year, do you have to keep checking all the different questions over and over again? Or does that?
I would say as a matter of practice, I would fill out a new one, mainly
Okay.
because that's going to be a pretty.
We do. I was just wondering if we
Yeah.
were doing double the amount of paperwork or.
And I get it, but I'm going to say it's probably going to be a pretty rare situation that you don't have a situation where it's something where if they've had an intervention for 10 months, that they
Mhm.
don't need some kind of real change. Because even with the
Right.
tier 2 intervention, after 10 months, they're really saying this is no longer effective and we need to look at more intensive placement. That's actually almost really too long to even look at something. Usually it's more like 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, I don't know if we just have a lot of people that like to hang around or if we have other questions that we're waiting on. Let's see, third grader makes pathway 2. We have not gotten OSTP scores. Can you go ahead and fill out the form? Sure, you can if you want to. If you want to just go ahead and get that out of the way. And what you would do is when they come back, if that, if Deb, if you fill out the form and she has her screening assessment, you fill this out and then she does meet RSA criteria, just shred the form. Because you wouldn't need that for OSTP if she's already met the RSA criteria on this and for pathway 1. Does that make sense? But if you want to just make sure that you have that, that's fine if you would rather go ahead and get that taken care of. A lot of your students that do meet pathway 2 should also be meeting RSA criteria. We're going to hope at least. That's generally the case. Again, I realize this is an odd year and I'm not going to go into those details, but okay, anything else? All righty, pathway 1 is the score. It's there. Remember, it's not tied to, there's the proficient and basic scores, but RSA criteria is not tied to those scores. There is a separate column on the OSTP report for third grade that will say RSA criteria. The vast majority, like 90% of students who score below basic will not meet RSA criteria. I'm really probably closer to 100%, but I want to give myself a little leeway. About 75% of our students who score basic also do not meet RSA criteria, but there are a few that, or sorry, about 25%. There are some though that will score basic and still be okay, because remember that RSA criteria is only using about 75% of the test. Standard 2, reading and writing process, and standard 4, vocabulary. So questions dealing with the other standards like grammar and research are not considered when looking at RSA criteria. And it is basically just taking the total point score, and they've OEQA, which is our Office of Educational Quality Assessment, has set what that RSA criteria would be, and they either meet it or don't meet it. So there's not even a range in there. I will say it's fairly on level with our 40th percentile grade level target that we have set on the screeners, because they do tend to line up fairly well. So don't worry about the basic, below basic, proficient when we're talking about RSA. We're looking at, did they meet RSA criteria or did they not meet RSA criteria? Okay, at least for the promotion retention decisions. So, April, give me a call anytime you need, because you're been thrown in on the deep end, sister. So it's okay. We'll help you out and hold your hand. So, and anyone on this group can also help out too. The ELA consortium that meets on Fridays. Which Friday is that, Deb? The second Friday of the month? second Friday of the month is also
got
a
it.
good resource group. So if you need help connecting with that group, I can't remember if you were there last month, let us know. We'll connect you to. So Kelly, let me just clarify. Has nothing to do with basic or below basic. It has everything to do with that RSA criteria column. Okay, so look at the RSA criteria. Don't worry about basic, below basic, because there's not an exact correlation between them. Okay, so that language has been removed from the statute. It's also been removed from the administrative rules. I know it's just somewhere it keeps floating around. So, but thank you for clarifying on that. Appreciate it. All right, anything else? Okay. All right, guys, go have a great April. And we will see you again in May. And our next one is on May 11th, second Tuesday of May. We will be here with smiles on, ready to entertain you. Hopefully we won't have any questions. We'll just be wrapping up and everyone can come and we'll do a happy hour in the middle of the day and we'll call it good.
I like that.
All right. I like that too. So don't forget, we have Engage. Well, we've got a few people here. When's Engage? Engage is in June this year. They surprised us and moved it.
21st, 22nd, 23rd.
Thank you very much. Lauren will be doing a session on kindergarten and readiness for kindergarten. And Deb will be doing 2 sessions, one with Jason Stevenson on our new ELA standards. And another one she gets to put up with me as we talk about foundational early literacy instruction.
I think Lauren's also doing a second one.
And Lauren is doing a second one. I forgot, on social and learning, right?
On
Yep.
SEL.
Yes. So yes, I have not memorized. We have 17 different just from our office alone. So it's trying to keep track of what everyone's doing, but lots of learning, and it will be virtual. So, and recorded, I'm sure. So if you're busy on vacation that day, you can come join us later. All right, guys. Thank you.